Right, so I was doing my assignment, and I was getting confused about what a nested loop is. Now, as you can see, my boy ChatGPT, I got him here to explain me what nested loops, and I kind of understand it now. And yeah, so if you need an example of what a nested loop is, this video is your guide. But essentially, this was the assignment. So task H, a nested for loop is where one for loop is placed within another, commonly used to process matrices or tabulated data. Write a program which uses two nested loops for loops to display the following integers. So essentially, we're just trying to print out a table of numbers that follow a certain pattern. And as you can see on the right here, this is my code. It's very janky and does not work at all. As you can see, for a is equal to 10. I was basically trying to brute force it. I was trying to calculate every single number by itself and then print it off. I had no clue what I was doing, right? This one didn't even make sense, because what would happen is, for a is, the start value is 10, and then but a is actually the rows, right? And is 10. So for b, we will go on to this one. B is 10, and then we'll increment it. It will print out b. It will print out the first number will be. I don't even know how to explain this. I don't even know what the heck is this code, but essentially it will print b, which is 10, and then it will print a, which is 10, and then it will go up by 5, which will be 15. Actually, it won't even do that. It will do this, because this bit executes once, and after this has been completed to its fullest, after the evaluation is false, when this evaluates to false, then this increments by 5. So actually what would happen, it will be 10, right? And then it'll do this again, and it will just be 15, and then 20, and then it'll go up to 55. But then it will, as this is finished, it will print this, and this will just print 10. And then it will increase by 15, which, by the way, there is no new line, and it will just create a string of numbers in the lateral direction, if that makes sense. So that code is completely janky. Here's another code that makes a bit of sense, but let me just explain this specific part. Essentially, I and j are going to be rows and your columns. I will be your rows. Now, I get this confused all the time. Rows are horizontal and columns are vertical. So what we want to usually do is when you tabulate data, is you want to have the outer loop to be your rows, and then you want your inner loop to be columns, right? So what it will do in this scenario, I is set to 0, so then we go on to the for loop, and j is equal to 0. So what happens is this prints out this, right? This will print out this. Now 10 is the start value. Yeah, that's what we want to start at. And I, since I is equal to 0, we have 0 times by 3, which is 0, plus j times by 5, but j is equal to 0, which will be 0, which equals to 10. Now, you might think that it will carry on to the next line, but no, it doesn't. A for loop continues to execute itself until the evaluation is false. Now, is 0 less than 7? Yes, it is. So it will do this again. And what will happen is we have print percentage %d 10 plus 0 times by 3, because don't forget that I is still set to 0, add j times by 5, which j now is equal to 1 because we have incremented it by 1, so that equals to 15. So 10 plus 5 is equal to 15. Now, with these, it will continue to do that until j is equal to 7. Now, when j is equal to 7, this evaluation is equal to false, which means that we are done with this for loop, with the inner for loop, and we go on to the next one, which is prints a new line, which means that we have finished with the row, or we've finished with the first set of values, right? As you can see, here's my section. It will be different numbers, but pretty much the same thing. As you can see, after y, let's say in this case, y is equal to 10, well, for specific actually, y is equal to 9, it will stop and it will not print out the ninth value, which will be 55 if it was going through this calculation. And what will happen is it will only print out to 8 when y is equal to 850. After that, it is done with this, right? The evaluating condition, because after it has been incremented, it equals to 9. This condition is false, and therefore we carry on with our printf statement, which prints a new line, right? And then we go back to this. This is important because then this gets incremented. So after it has tabulated, all this has done, we will then increment x by 1, because this is just increment, and x is now equal to 1. And since after this we are now printing a new row, as you can see, we have a new starting value because now x is equal to 1. And because x is equal to 1, this will equal to 3, and this will equal to 0 because of the first iteration, which equals to 13, and then we carry on by 5. And we do this until this reaches 5, so until this increments by 5, and yeah, it stops there. We return 0. And that's pretty much how it works. That's how a nested loop works. I want to just highlight a couple of points. One of the points is that in a nested for loop, the outer loop, in this case, the outer loop over here, executes once after all of this has done. Right, everyone's sold out in my house. But what you have here is you have the outer loop, and after this only executes once, and the increments only after this has been done, after this evaluating condition is done. So after this evaluation is false, it will then increment this. That's the important detail, and that's how nested for loops work. And it's pretty interesting because you can make some pretty cool tables. What if I do let's put /t just to see what it does. I mean, I know tabs thing, but how does it look? As you can see, wow, what amazing data that we have. But yeah, you can then start, tabulating graphs and stuff like that. Maybe if you wanna include some libraries, or I don't know how C works, but in Python terms, libraries like matplot. I don't know if matplot is in C, but I think it is. You can start drawing graphs, and yeah, it's pretty good, I'd say. And yeah, thank you for watching my horrendous tutorial. Piss off.